Sam Darnold. Man, did he have a rough night last night.
So I got a question for you. Should the Vikings move on from Sam Darnold? And is this an overreaction or a reality?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's look at it this way. If you take in the full picture of what Sam Darnold did this season, I would say there's no way that you could even think for 1 minute that they're going to move on from Sam. Now, he had a tremendous season with the Vikings. He ranked 5th in passing yards, like 4,300 yards on the season. He had 35 passing touchdowns. He finished 6th in passer rating, 102.5. He led the Vikings to a 14-3 record and a playoff berth on just a $10 million salary. While many teams are overpaying players like Dak Prescott, however you want to pronounce it, $60 million a year, he did it for $10 million. Now, being one of the best bargains in football, I would say that he way overperformed his salary. They definitely got all of their money's worth out of Sam Darnold. But with that being said, Darnold's last 2 games were absolutely atrocious, just terrible. He completed 53.1% of his passes, 411 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, passer rating of 66.4. He was sacked 11 times during that stretch of the last 2 games, which included last night's wild card loss where he was sacked 9 times. But he also was very slow in his progressions over the last couple of weeks. He took way too long to get rid of the football and turn the ball over. He had the fumble that was returned for a touchdown by the Rams, and other interceptions, the last couple of weeks that turned into points for teams. And I think that Sam Darnold's Cinderella story kind of turned into a pumpkin last night real quick. And this may be enough of a sample size for the Vikings to move on the last 2 games. I think that they're going to definitely think about it because they have J.J. McCarthy kind of waiting, in the wings, so to speak. And the Vikings really needed Darnold to kind of take over one of these last 2 games, and he really failed to do so. He made their 14-win season look obsolete, and to many people, the Vikings have just been frauds all season, just waiting to implode. And so for that reason, I feel that they won't risk investing into Sam, and JJ will be the starter next season. I can't see them forking out $50, $55, $60 million a year to Sam Darnold after what they've seen the last 2 games. So the answer is more of a reality at this point that Sam Darnold will not be the quarterback for the Vikings next year, but I do think he lands on his feet. And I'm not sure where, but could be the Raiders. But when you look at the last couple of games, he's really had a rough stretch of a couple of weeks. Now, I'll go back to the beginning of the season. I said that Sam Darnold was going to have a phenomenal year, and he did. Yep. Going 14-3, being one of the only 14-win teams in the league, right? There's a couple of them. That's an incredible feat. And the way that he displayed, accurate throwing throughout the season. He put on a display in just about every single game that kind of shocked you a little bit, like, where did this guy come from? I wasn't surprised, but man, did it all fall apart in a hurry since week 18 when the Lions, did they shake, rattle, and roll Sam Darnold to the point where he couldn't put all the pieces back together? Was he like a Mr. Potato Head? Everything fell apart and he couldn't find all the pieces? I don't know. He looked terrible last night, but I don't think that everything was his fault. Obviously, you have to put a little bit of the blame on the Rams because they played a very good game. But Darnold was outmatched. He was overwhelmed Monday night in the first playoff game of his career. So clearly the lights were bright in front of his eyes. He hasn't been here before. The Rams entered Monday's game with a very clear game plan, which was pressure, pressure, pressure. Do it early, do it often, and it worked. Darnold became indecisive, just like he was in week 18. Now, throughout the night, though, he did frequently hold the ball way too long. And he was highly inaccurate last night, just as he was in week 18. But I think that it was his mismanagement of holding the ball which created a lot of these, issues for that team last night. Not all of those sacks were generated by the defense. They were generated by Sam Darnold. And he's been doing this throughout this season. It just wasn't as highly anticipated that he was going to hold the ball last night, especially going up against, a NASCAR, speed of the Rams that they have on that defensive side of the football. Those guys are fast. Now, Darnold was sacked on the second play of scrimmage last night, and that set up a 3rd and 21, ultimately forced a 3-and-out. And then on the second drive, another sack of Darnold limited the Vikings to having to take a field goal. And then on Minnesota's third possession, ended in an interception. Kobe Durant anticipated and jumped the route on Jordan Addison. And then on the very next possession, Rams cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon blitzed Darnold's blind side and hit Darnold for a strip sack, which then Jared Verse, my number one prospect of this season as an edge rusher or an outside linebacker, scooped and scored a 57-yard touchdown. That put the Rams up 17-3, and they were never going to relinquish the lead at that point. The question was it all Sam Darnold? The answer is no. The defense still let up 21 points as the Vikings offense gave up 6 to Jared Verse. The offensive line was just horrendous at protecting Darnold last night, but there was a clear and major issue last night, and that was Sam Darnold freezes. And it's like he was a deer in headlights frozen last night. When he freezes, man, he just holds that ball for dear life, doesn't get rid of it, and before you know it, the Rams defense is all over him, and that's how they were able to get to him so early and so often throughout this game. You wouldn't believe me if I told you that he had over 3.2 seconds of time to throw last night. How do you have that much time and you're getting sacked 9 times? It's because he held the ball. He saw a ghost, as people like to say. I think he freezes. He froze. So the key points that I made during the game, Sam held the ball. That's no surprise. The ball was out very late. His feet were erratic all over the place. He never sat before he threw last night. I mean, I can see why. I mean, after a few sacks and you know, the game's kind of getting out of control at that point, he was all over the place mentally. I mean, I could assume mentally, right? But last night, they just looked like Swiss cheese on that offensive line. I mean, they were the most porous offensive line I've seen for the Vikings this season. So you can't put it all on the Rams defense, and you can't put it all on what the Vikings defense didn't do. I think a lot of this rests on the shoulders of Sam Darnold holding the ball last night. But the Rams, man, they had a great plan. I think that they watched, obviously, Week 18 and saw what worked for us, and it clearly worked again last night.
So I have a question for you while we're on the Vikings.
Okay.
Were the Vikings the most overrated team in the NFL this season?
Yeah.
Is that a overreaction or a reality?
Interesting. I think that a 14-win team can't be overrated. So I would say that no 14-win team in the NFL should really be overrated. No matter how anyone tries to spin it, I think that the Vikings had a tremendous season. They had a 14-3 record, but the end of their season took away the incredible year that they had and the incredible season that Sam Darnold was able to manufacture. Minnesota was outscored 58-18 in the final 2 games of the season for them. They failed to score 10 points against the Lions and the Rams. Is that coaching? Is that, player personnel? Is it all Sam Darnold? What is it? I think that you have to point your finger at everybody. In kind of a weird twist, though. I mean, the Vikings lost back-to-back games to the same teams twice this year. They fell to the Lions in Week 6 and then the Rams in Week 7. And then they lost to the Lions in Week 18 and then the Rams in the wild card round. That's kind of weird, right? It's just really weird. Now, those were the only 4 losses that the Vikings had all season. So yep. I can't say that they're overrated. I just think that they were overmatched by 2 teams twice this season. Now, the Vikings became the first 14-win team to lose back-to-back games to end the season, but that shouldn't take away the year that they had. I think that there's a lot of meat on the bone here in Minnesota. I think that, the fact that Minnesota beat Green Bay twice and was, 4-3 against 10-plus win teams or against 10-plus win teams this season. I think the Vikings weren't an elite team, but they weren't overrated. So I think that's a little bit of an overreaction, a lot less likely to be reality. I think that they're going to retool this offseason, and they're going to be right back in our face in 2025.
You can do it!